Good afternoon, dear journalists, dear guests. Welcome to the press conference. We are very delighted to welcome the Prime Minister of the Slovak Republic here in Tallinn in Estonia. The Prime Minister Kaja Kallas and Prime Minister Eduard Heger just concluded their bilateral meeting and will deliver short remarks. After that, it is possible for media to ask questions. First, Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, the floor is yours, please.
Dear Eduard, dear media, I'm very happy and very pleased to welcome you as the first ever Slovak Prime Minister to Estonia. So it's a very remarkable event. Relations between Estonia and Slovakia are very good, and today we discussed how we can deepen them even more. I see a lot of potential in many areas of cooperation, notably ICT, education, cybersecurity. I'm glad you will be visiting also the e-Estonia Briefing Center later. I'm particularly happy that Slovakia is interested in the educational cooperation. According to PISA 2018, the Estonian general education is first in Europe and also among the best in the world. But as the power of knowledge reaches its full potential when it's shared, we are happy to share our best practices and experiences. Education is also security policy. It's about future-proofing forward democracies, to make our societies more resilient and to make our children creators, not users of innovation. Estonia and Slovakia share the same understanding about the severity of the current security situation. You are Ukraine's neighbor, we are the aggressor's neighbor. Not only is Russia waging a war in Ukraine, there is also a hybrid war, energy war, and information war going on. We discussed today what we are doing to support our people regarding energy bills and high prices caused by the Russian aggression. We need coordinated solutions on the European level. We saw markets react well when EU leaders made a political headway in October. Now it's important that the quick deal is reached. Russia's interest is also to divide us, not only as allies and partners, but also our societies. In this moment, cooperation between close allies and good partners is more important than ever. We must continue to stand united against Russia. Ukraine needs to win this war, and with our help, they will. What we see at the moment in Ukraine is Russia trying to use all the means possible to push for a pause, so that they could regroup and continue later to ultimately get something that was not theirs to begin with. Russia is not doing well militarily, so they focus their efforts on terror tactics. With the deliberate and systematic campaign against ordinary Ukrainians and civilian infrastructure, they want to cause maximum harm before the winter. While dropping missiles and threatening with nukes, Russia is also talking peace. This is another tactic to push for a pause on the battlefield. I do not believe in the goodwill of an outright aggressor and cold-blooded war criminals. It is no time for negotiations. It is time to keep up the rising cost of war to Russia and scale up our help. What Ukraine needs most at the moment is military, economic, and humanitarian assistance. Like Estonia, Slovakia is one of the top 8 givers to Ukraine per capita. Like Estonia, Slovakia understood the importance of military aid early on. I call on others to do the same. Look in your stockpiles, in your warehouses, in your reserves, and send arms to Ukraine. This is the way to peace. I also welcome the European Commission new proposed 80 billion euro support package for 2023, launched earlier this week. As with military aid, Ukraine also needs strong financial support to win this war. And let me finish by pointing out Estonia's and Slovakia's close cooperation in NATO. Slovakia's presence in the Baltic region in Latvia is highly appreciated. We are both Eastern flank countries, and I'm glad that there is now a NATO battle group also in Slovakia. We need to focus on our own defense as well. Like Slovakia, Estonia is increasing its defense spending. By next year, Estonians' defense spending will be nearly 3% of our GDP. We are also both working hard on the road to the NATO summit in Vilnius and to ensure that the Madrid summit decisions are implemented with due speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Heger, please.
Thank you much, dear ladies, dear gentlemen, dear Kaja. Thank you very much for this fruitful and productive discussion. As you said, there is many areas for possible and future cooperation and mutual cooperation. And it is a great pleasure for me to be the first Prime Minister of Slovakia and Estonia, and I think this is very important to develop this relationship. I mean, there is two areas, I would say, the peacetime areas that we can develop, and I will point out them in a moment. But right now we know we are very difficult times of crisis. As you said, we are the neighbor of Ukraine, who was aggressively, brutally attacked by Russia. You are the neighbor of the aggressor. And that's why it's so important to speak of the issues of security, of defense, of unity, of allies, and visit each other and really understand what's going on in each country and how much we are under this threat. So that's why I'm so glad we could touch the topics of the threat to our countries, but also to discuss the need to help Ukraine to win the war, as you said. And definitely we need to keep helping Ukraine during this winter, but also the next year till the end, whatever it takes. There is the great need for financial stability of Ukraine, which is developed by European Commission, and both of our countries are supporting, of course, this solution. We'll have to strengthen our help during this winter time to Ukraine, but as you said, there is no time for pause. Definitely the Ukrainian people are motivated to protect their land, and we have to support them as much as we can. On the other topics that we discussed, and I'm so glad we could go deeper in it, I would start with the security issues, cybersecurity, which we see in the 21st century, is more and more of issues, which is very much related and linked to the education. We see in Slovakia that the radicalization on social platforms is really growing, and we see that the ICT on one hand is very much helping our societies to have a much better quality of life. On the other hand, we see the new threats that we are facing, and radicalization of the youth is one of them. That's why we need to work together in common to speak to the global social platforms and bring regulation where we can protect our children from getting radical and causing aggression to each other and also to the society. We also discussed the issues of the energy resources, which we are facing, as you said. And I was traveling the last couple of days through several countries, and we all realized within the EU that we need to help, and we will help our households, will help our economy to overcome this price increase that Vladimir Putin caused to all of our Europe. But we are not going to allow him to disunite us. We'll stay united, and we will provide solutions together with the European Commission to lead our nations through this crisis, and then focus on the recovery as we started during the COVID. And also I informed that what we are doing in helping the Ukraine. We are helping Ukraine with special tools as diesel generators, etc., because we see that they want to stay on their territory, and that's why we need to help them to provide the necessary equipment to overcome the winter times. But one more thing on the ICT, as you said, because this is definitely a topic, and I say in Slovakia that a healthy and educated nation is a successful nation. And we see it also in your example, and you are a great inspiration for us in the era of digitalization and e-government. And as you mentioned during the meeting, that we live online, we live online every day, and government must be present in the online life of our citizens. So that's a great inspiration for us to speed up the process of the digitalization of the government. As we say, we're providing and developing more and more, deepening the project Government in the Mobile. That's where people spend a lot of time these days. So you are a great inspiration of that. And I'm also thankful for the discussion we had on the online elections. There's been a topic in Slovakia for several years. There's been a lot of questions around it. So thank you for providing us more information and the proof that it's actually working, and we can follow your path if we decide so in Slovakia. And the last thing, I'm very glad that I will be also visiting the e-Estonia briefing center. We'll discuss the experience of what you went through in Estonia, especially in the ICT and e-government environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's possible for media to ask questions. Please state your name, media outlet you're representing, and to whom the question is addressed to. Please, first.
Hi, Tarmo Maiberg from Estonian Public Broadcasting Company. So first to you, Mr. Prime Minister, do you support the creation of special tribunal for aggression for the war in Ukraine? And question to both of you. Just recently, Germany decided to sell 25% of its strategically important port, Hamburg, to Chinese firm COSCO. And I don't want to ask what do you think of that, but more broadly, how should we in European Union should define strategically important infrastructure and companies that should not be sold to adversaries, enemies, or even terrorist state? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. If I can start with the second. Well, what we see, and this whole crisis is really providing us, on one hand, a lot of hard times, but on the other hand, a lot of lessons learned. And what we see, Slovakia, but other countries as well, that we were too dependent and too long on insecure sources, I would say, in this case, Russian gas and oil, and thinking that cheap oil and gas could get us through, and we traded our values. And that was definitely the lessons that we learned that we should never repeat. So going back to your question on this, we realize and we understand that Europe must become more autonomous on its own resources. The portfolio must be broadened, and definitely we have to make a lot of progress in this area as well. That's definitely the lesson learned out of this. And there's many others. When we speak, the other question was
tribunal.
The tribunal. Well, we've been discussing this in Slovakia, and the way the discussion that we have is rather the international progress and international and united approach to it.
Yes. Estonia has been speaking about trusted connectivity for years, and this is exactly what is it about. That in the global world we are more and more connected, but we have to make sure that we are connected to friends, or at least countries that share our values, because by every connection the other side might also hurt you. And this is how different countries build their strength. China has not been in the center of the world, geographically, but they are building the strength otherwise by investing to critical infrastructure. And that's why we have already been talking about the trusted connectivity, that we have to make sure that we make those investments within those countries that share our values. Otherwise, we end up in the same situation as we did with Nord Stream, and wondered how we did reach this point. We are living through some really difficult times, and we have to consider the security aspects regarding all such investments, really, so that we don't make ourselves dependent on countries that maybe don't share our values in all the aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, please.
I would like to ask both of you, in which way can be cooperation between Estonia and Slovakia narrower, closer? In which ways can be cooperation between Slovakia and Estonia narrower, closer?
Well, as we said, and as we were sharing, the aim of this travel was to speak about education, e-government, informational technologies. This is definitely an area where we can learn from, and we can follow your example, because we see, and that's another fact that I would like to add, we see that the investments, especially for the countries who doesn't have any natural resources, we have our people. And the investment into our people, into their development, into their education, is the best investment we can do. And we can see it in countries, and Estonia is also the example where you spend and invest into digitalization, how much progress it can bring, and the leadership in this area is on Estonia's side. So we would like to follow that. And it's very much linked, I will share now, with innovations. This is something, it's a strong part of our recovery plan after the COVID that we developed. And we not only spending a lot of money on investing and helping startups and all kind of innovation companies to prosper in Slovakia, but also to build the ecosystem. And we know that in the 21st century, it doesn't go without the information technology. So that's one great era. But as we saw, the security and the defense and the view, also as the countries on the eastern flank, understanding the security threats. There we have very common language. We have the same understanding. Both of our countries were strong promoters of Ukrainian candidate status, and we need to understand why. I mean, it's because we very much, first of all, understand what the Ukrainians are going through, but on the second hand, it is that it is security issue, not just for our countries, but for the whole European Union. And that was part of the discussion we had. So in future, I see more and more cooperation between Slovakia and Estonia, and also with other member countries. The connection, I would say that the European affairs are becoming more and more the daily national affairs, because it's so much intertwined. And if we want, as a democratic world, to succeed and really show and bring to our citizens and also to the world that is the best way to live, then we have to stay united.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not much to add to that. I echo what Eduard was saying. Education, ICT, definitely cybersecurity, but also in NATO we are good allies, and the security issues being both eastern flank nations. I think this is where we can cooperate more to address the problems that we both have. And also I think sharing the know-how and knowledge regarding the war refugees and how to deal with the challenges that come with it, because we are also a country that has accepted more than 3% of our population is already Ukrainian war refugees. So this is what we definitely share.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Mari-Liis Truused from Delfi. My question is for both prime ministers. So according to recent surveys, more than half of Slovakian people will welcome Russia's victory over Ukraine. With this in mind, what more can we do in order to stop the pro-Kremlin propaganda from spreading? Thank you.
If you don't mind, I will start, because you mentioned Slovakia. And yes, I mean, another thing is that Slovakia is under strong Russian propaganda. It's been going on, and we had to do different steps in the past. We expelled also a lot of diplomats, because we saw that they were doing a lot of funding and feeding a lot of propaganda. And the result is what you say. There were other surveys that showed how we would act in case of being attacked as Ukraine was, and the numbers weren't good as well. So that's why the education, as I said, is very important, but it's a rather long run. But we're spending a lot of effort. We're finishing the curricular reform, which will be launched next year, and it will be a longer process. But on the second important area is the internet, is the social platforms, as I said, where a lot of people is getting a lot of disinformation. That's why we started the communication months ago, and I had a separate meeting with different companies from the social platforms discussing how we can regulate the content to prevent and to protect our citizens from this disinformation that is being pushed very strongly to our society. And through this, also the regulation on the internet, I think we can start to cut off this influence and bring back people to the truth. But also we have to educate very much on the critical thinking. This is a great area. We see that the vulnerables are the youth, but also the elderly people who are new to the internet over the last years. And the pressure that is recent over the last 2 or 3 years is really more than we can bear right now, and we have to spend more money on it and also cooperate on the cybersecurity, as we said.
Yes, what has to be understood is that Russia's aim is to divide us, not only as partners and allies, but also as our societies. And therefore, the propaganda is used. What we saw was that when we closed the Russian propaganda channels, then our Russian minorities turned to Estonian channels of information, and what we also see that this changes their mind in terms of this war. There are, I mean, not entirely 180% turned around, but they move more to the truth side. So that was definitely one very important step. What is also important to explain to our people is that it is the international rules-based order that is at stake. And all our internal problems right now, the high energy costs, the inflation, actually stem from the war going on. And that's why we have to put the pressure on Russia to stop this war. Because if we don't, and this aggression pays off, it serves as an invitation to use aggression somewhere else. And this is dangerous for all of us, for our societies. We all want to live in peace. And therefore, we also have to cooperate to share this knowledge, know-how, what we have done, what you have done, and what are the obstacles there as well. But it's difficult because on the other side, we are in the information war, and Russia is very good with this.
If I may to add one more group of people that I forgot to mention is the politicians. And it is a call for the politicians to be really truthful in sharing the information. We see that there is still a lot of politicians who abuse this topic and actually jump on the wave of this disinformation and are feeding our citizens with a lot of disinformation. And that's unfair is the very kind word. It's totally wrong. So we have to also ask the society to ask from the politicians to be very truthful and really speaking the data and not just sharing some disinformation.
How is it going?
Well, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, but we have to speak it up.
Yeah.
And this is the culture of the politics that we have to point out, and we have to work in this arena.
So, and time for final question, please.
My name is Michal Zurik from the Slovak public broadcaster RTVS. Prime Minister Kallas, Estonia is experienced in everything digital. That means you also have lots of experience with security threats and cyber security attacks. What can we do in Slovakia to avoid them, since you have more experience with this? What would be your recommendations, maybe more in particular?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, we have experience with the cyber attacks since 2007, when we were very widely attacked by Russia. And therefore, the lessons we learned from there was that how to build up your e-governance system. So if you go to the briefing room, then they will show you how our system is built up. So basically, you have a lot of small dots that are connected to each other. So if one dot goes out of work, then all the other dots function and the whole system does not collapse. That's one important part, that you don't have one big central database, but you have different smaller ones. So also in terms of attacking, which one you attack so that the whole system would collapse if they are all small. That's for one. The second is that we have invested a lot in the foundation of our e-governance and cybersecurity. And this is very hard for the politicians because it's something you don't see. People see it when it collapses and then they are very annoyed by this. But when it all functions, then as politicians, you can't go to the elections and say that, oh, we keep the system running. So this is difficult politically, but it has to be done. And also to be more resilient to the cyber attacks, you have to invest there, but also do the cyber exercises. And there, I think it's fundamental that we also share the information about the attacks, because the bad guys share information, the good guys should share information as well, because only then we can learn from those and be more resilient. So far we are seeing cyber attacks growing, but they haven't been really successful. But everybody has to be, keeping this in mind, because not only the government structures, but right now we have, as we are living online, we are living our lives online, which means that, a few years ago, hospitals only had to worry about some morphine addict coming and stealing the drugs. But now the hospitals are also a security threat because they are all connected, and when they are cyber attacked, there might be civilian casualties. So look, not only the government structures, but also the hospitals, all the critical infrastructure, and also educate the companies to invest more in cybersecurity and not to overlook that. And also education is important.
Thank you. And unfortunately, this is all the time we have. This concludes the press conference, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.